This is the Becoming Muslim podcast at untoislam.com, the show that helps people convert to Islam with hosts from the US, UK, and Australia.
It's just something that I really yearned for. I wanted it so badly, but it was like something, it just felt like a mismatch. That's why I tried different churches, with different denominations, and I just couldn't settle on it. Something didn't connect. Just out and about, and they would always make time to pray. And I thought, man, how much love they must have for their faith in order to commit themselves so much to their prayers. Became so much, I guess, just so much more at peace. My life just kind of finally made sense. It had a purpose. My schedule, basically, it was, prayer was kind of at my foundation of my daily routine. Things just kind of started to flow better. I always refer to the first several years after my conversion as the absolute most peaceful and amazing, years of my entire life. A complete instruction manual, and when I learned about Islam and just how detailed and just how everything is covered. We're given a lot of wiggle room in certain aspects and whatnot, but kind of the foundation of this is what you should do versus this is what you should not do. I just thought, man, this is the instruction manual that I've been looking for, all of my life.
Dear listeners, welcome back to the Onto Islam podcast. Today we have the privilege of talking to Lindsey Nicole, who is a 34-year-old American Muslim convert since 2007, a certified nutritionist and author and mother of two. Following the end of her 14-year marriage in 2018, Lindsey moved abroad with her children and has lived throughout North Africa and the Middle East since. She uses the difficulties she has faced in life, including childhood trauma, her battle with depression and anxiety, and divorce, along with her love for both Islam and holistic health, to teach busy mothers worldwide how to balance healthy living and spirituality with their hectic lives. Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. So before we delve into what you're doing now, we kind of want to get some background information on how you grew up and the kind of religious teachings that were in your household, if any.
Sure. So basically, I was not raised in a very religious household at all. Our involvement with the Christian community was basically limited to a Sunday service here or there, and the usual Christmas celebration and Easter celebration. But in regards to the actual, foundation of Christianity and its teachings, it was pretty much non-existent growing up.
So how did you process that as a child, though, in and out of church and just holiday religion?
I always just saw religion as just something that it's not necessary for it to be a priority in your life. It was just something that some people were drawn to and others, like my family, were not. I actually did not have any family members that I can recall that were, as you would consider, I guess, devout Christians. So it's just something I wasn't actually really aware of. But I do remember as I, entered, in my teen years, I remember making friends with people who were very involved with the church. And it actually was really appealing to me. I I found these people to be just different than others. They just had this like sense of belonging and the sense of community at their church. So I actually did start to try to become more involved in the church community in my teen years.
And how did your family take to that?
They were fine with it. They didn't really have an opinion either way.
Hmm. And so, when we're speaking about Christianity, that's a very broad brush. Is there a specific sect, or was it like Protestantism, Catholicism? What?
No, a majority of people, I think, in the area of Central Florida where I grew up, I believe were Baptist, but I can't recall us really sticking to one particular sect when it came to the few times we did go to church. When I started to become more involved in church, I actually leaned towards the non-denominational. But before that, it was just kind of all over the place.
Okay, and so your family is not practicing to this day. They just still or go for holidays.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so when did you first hear about Islam?
So my now ex-husband is originally Syrian, and I actually, it's a very common misconception when you see a convert within a Muslim husband that she converted, for him. But actually, when I met my now ex-husband, he was not raised in a religious family at all. I've known him now for 18 years, and I still really don't know much about his family's religious beliefs. It just simply, kind of like my family, it was just simply not a focus whatsoever in their lives. So when I met him, I was only 17 actually, and I was actually trying to get involved in the church, and we just never talked about faith. We never talked about religion at all. But ironically, the first time that I learned about Islam was I was actually working at a church preschool, and one of the teachers, she knew that my husband was Syrian, so she basically said, well, he must be Muslim. How do you feel about that? And I told her, well, I don't really know if he is or not. I don't really know much about his, religious beliefs or whatnot. But we were planning my first trip to meet his family in Damascus. And so I said, now is a good time for me to actually just at least learn about Islam. It is a Muslim country, so despite his family not being practicing, it would be, good for me just to at least grasp an idea about Islam before actually going to a Muslim country. And that was the first time. I learned about Islam essentially in the beginning from a Christian preschool teacher, ironically. So
That is pretty funny. And so it was just based on a conversation with her. You didn't take it farther to get a book or anything like that. It was just.
no, I did. That kind of was what opened the door. I had intentions of learning just a bit again before I ventured over to Damascus, but when she was kind of my my first opportunity to basically gain knowledge about Islam. Initially, I was not the least bit interested in converting. I love to learn. I love to read, and it felt like it was appropriate for me to learn about Islam before going to Syria. So we began actually spending our lunch breaks together, and she had previously studied Islam quite extensively, actually. So she would relay to me what she, had learned herself, and at the same time, I began to purchase books and do, a bit of research of my own on Islam.
Mm-hmm. And so, when did you first start to feel like, maybe this is the truth, and take it seriously, thinking about converting?
I remember initially when I learned about the very foundation of Islam and about, actually, let's back up just a bit. When I was teaching at a preschool, church preschool, I was really trying to find my sense of connection with God, and so it's just something that I really yearned for. I wanted it so badly, but it was like something, it just felt like a mismatch. That's why I tried different churches, with different denominations, and I just couldn't settle on it. Just something didn't connect. So coincidentally, the pastor at the church that I was working at told me, I haven't seen you in service for a while. Why don't you come to the service tonight on a Wednesday night? And so I went, and ironically, he was actually the sermon was about the basis of Christianity, the Trinity. And so he, basically was just explaining it more in detail and whatnot. And I remember actually leaving that Wednesday night service, and I said, I can't consider myself a Christian. The very foundation of Christianity, it just doesn't sit with me. It doesn't. I can't get myself to connect with it. And so I was very much, wanting to have a strong connection with God. But at that point, I just kind of gave up organized religion. And I felt like, well, I'll be agnostic. I'll believe in God, but maybe not specific organized religion. And but then when I sat down with this friend of mine, and she started to tell me about the basics of Islam and how God is considered just, as one with no partners, and that Jesus was a prophet, and that, Muhammad, peace be upon him, came after him for many reasons, including to clear up the message that was changed after the death or after Jesus left Earth. And I remember kind of having this aha moment, like, wait a second, that sounds like so much like that's not really, that makes sense. And that's, it's something that it was kind of like almost, trying to find a missing puzzle piece, and finally finding it, and just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And so in the same time, my now ex-husband had befriended. We lived in an area where there was virtually no Muslims at all, and so he happened to befriend two Muslim guys. And they actually became like brothers to me. And though we wouldn't talk about religion, they were so different than anyone that I had been around growing up. They just had this kind of shyness towards me. I remember seeing them pray when we went, we would go out, my ex-husband and them and myself, for, just out and about, and they would always make time to pray. And I thought, man, how much love they must have for their faith in order to, to commit themselves so much to their prayers. And so, this all kind of was like happening, within the same, year, basically. And so I was learning, I took it upon myself to really just dive deep into learning more, because it's something, at that point, it had just piqued my interest. It was something like, this is something, it's worth looking into, but again, I didn't see myself converting then, because it was just so foreign at that point. I had literally known no other practicing Muslim until, at that point I was 20 years old. And, so it was just, it almost seemed like this very foreign religion, and I thought, I don't think that I could, do that. But I started reading books teaching about Islam, and I actually started reading books against Islam, because, I thought, well, I want to see both sides. I want to make sure that, I'm getting both sides of the story. And lo and behold, most of the books that I was reading against Islam, I would cross-reference. I would basically, they would cite a verse in the Quran, for example, and I would go to my English Quran, I would open it up, and I would go to the verse, and it would either not say what it claimed it said, or the verse before or after it, would explain more about what it meant. And so most of those, books were kind of actually easily disproven. The ultimate turning point for me was I had spent several months studying. My trip to Syria was approaching, and I kind of challenged my ex-husband's friends to, I said, I've done so much research, and I have this this kind of list of questions, and it was a long list of questions. And I said, I would be interested to sit down with someone of knowledge and get just clear answers on these questions that I've got. And so they actually found this this sheikh who immediately invited my ex-husband and I over, and he just sat me down and said, you can ask me absolutely anything that you'd like. And previously, having been Christian, I asked a lot of questions. I'm just a very inquisitive person. So I would ask one priest or preacher a question and get one answer, and I would ask another preacher the same question and get a totally different answer, and so on and so forth. So I kind of expected the same, with this sheikh. So I sat down with the sheikh, and I sat with him for 5 hours. And what astounded me was the fact that not only I was certain that he wasn't going to have a satisfactory response to each one of my questions, but what surprised me was he would answer my question not just with an opinion, but he would answer my question with proof. He would answer my question with, well, in the Quran, at this verse, it says this, or, a hadith, a saying or action of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, teaches us that, we do this or don't do this. And so it was not his opinion. It was never his opinion. He always backed it up with actual facts. And 5 hours later, I left, and I remember the car ride home as if it was yesterday. I just thought, well, what else am I supposed to do other than convert at this point? I kind of, it's been laid out on the table, and I have no other argument. Like I can't, everything's been answered. Everything's been clear, and it makes so much sense. So what is there other to do other than convert? And that's what I did the next day.
MashaAllah. So it's a very beautiful and I think important point to say that your character as a Muslim can really have an influence on other people. And this is the best form of dawah because that's initially what piqued your interest. And then sitting down and getting the information uh, from the Quran and the Hadith from a learned scholar is what actually convicted you that this is the truth. And if I don't accept it now, then my life won't make sense, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm very, I, that's something that I always stress to other Muslims and always stress to myself is exactly what you said. Their character, their conviction, their manners, everything, that it really made such a difference, in just how my introduction, I guess, to Islam was.
Right.
So it absolutely is so essential that we are the best examples of Muslims as we possibly can be.
Yes, exactly. And so you made this life-changing decision. And I want to back up just a little bit though, because you had said Islam seems so foreign. By that, do you mean because of the Arabic? Was that one of your resistance points?
Yeah, definitely. I hadn't even the first 20 years of my life, I hadn't even ever met a Muslim. In fact, I can't say that I even maybe met an Arab before my ex-husband. So it did indeed just kind of seem like this very strange religion to me. I honestly grew up, a vast majority of the people that I grew up around were Christian and very little diversity. So it definitely did seem like a very strange, foreign, religion to me.
Hmm. And so then when you finally got over this and you were convicted this was the truth and you converted, how did your family react to that?
Fortunately, both my mother and father very much supported my decision. Fortunately, I didn't have to fight those initial beliefs of, oh, you converted, for him, he forced you or whatnot, because my ex-husband and I had at that point been married for about 2 years. And it's funny, but essentially he kind of converted alongside with me. We actually learned to pray together. We learned, we learned about fasting Ramadan together. It's just that wasn't something that he had ever done until that point. So the fact that we kind of had taken this journey together, it was clear to everybody that it was very much a decision, that both of us had taken individually. And so they were actually very supportive. Even I shortly, I decided to wear the hijab only a few months after my conversion, and despite there being absolutely no other covered Muslim woman in my area, they were quite supportive. My grandparents on both sides, not so much, but I think that kind of, it's kind of to be expected, right?
Yeah, well, a couple generations and
Exactly.
that it's a little different, but mashallah,
Exactly.
it's nice that your parents were supportive and are supportive, I would assume, to this day.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Um, so then how did your life change after Islam? What were some of the practical things? What were some of the things that surprised you? Maybe what were some of the most difficult things?
Um, Well, before I converted, I was kind of just being a, I guess, typical teenager or young adult, and would, on occasion go out and party and whatnot. And after I took the Shahada, I literally never had even the urge to indulge in these in these type of things again. So that was definitely a huge change. I put the headscarf on shortly after, which was a huge change. I actually quit my job at the church so that I could wear. I'm not sure if they would have allowed it or not, but it just didn't feel right for me to be working at the church any longer. So I that was that was definitely a significant change, especially considering the fact that there was just I probably was the only covered Muslim woman in my area, so I got a lot of attention, and just the the I would say that after I converted, I honestly became so much, I guess, just so much more at peace. My life just kind of finally, made sense. It had a purpose. My routine, was, surrounded by, or my schedule basically. It was, prayer was kind of at my foundation of my daily routine, and I don't know, the things just kind of started to flow better. It just I found I always refer to the first several years after my conversion as the absolute most peaceful and amazing, years of my entire life. And I say the first few just because having kids has definitely changed, a lot of my life, of course. And it's just, it's made it a lot more difficult for me to commit myself to, um, regular, just studying and just watching, lectures and podcasts. And I benefited from that, those things in my early years of being Muslim so much. It just like, it gave me such a sense of peace and such a sense of belonging. And that was another change, was the fact that I started to become involved, though I didn't have a mosque, anywhere close by. I would have to drive about an hour to the nearest mosque, and though a majority of the people there were Pakistani, I was kind of the only the only white convert there. Um, I I just felt so comfortable there. I didn't feel kind of like an outsider. I just felt like these are my people, you know? So that sense of belonging was just significant. I'm not very close to, a lot of my family at all. And just my struggles with the Christian community and just trying to find that sense of belonging just between me and God, it was just it was so refreshing to finally, be part of something that I truly believed, like, this is like where I belong.
Yeah, you feel at home, finally.
Exactly.
So you mentioned them. I would assume that not only listening to the Quran, but listening to Islamic lectures and things like that are some of your favorite tools for increasing your faith.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would absolutely say that is kind of, it's different for everyone, but for me, that's kind of a make or break. And it's one of the first things that that I suggest to anyone who is struggling in their faith, is find people that really speak to you, and of course, they need to be, of course, legitimate and ensure that their knowledge is sound, but just find people who you can relate to and who you feel just you can connect with, and because listening to those, on a regular basis, it's kind of like food for the soul. So I think in fact, that's one of my, when I became pregnant, after just a few years after my shahada, I, I kind of just got wrapped up in the whole, of course, pregnancy, you're exhausted anyways. And I'm, such a bookworm that I started kind of diving into just all things pregnancy and all things childbirth and newborn and whatnot. And I kind of let my commitment to these regular Islamic, my kind of informal Islamic studies kind of go. And looking back, I wish more than anything that I would have kept that up. Just that regular, reminders and just inspiration and encouragement, in my faith.
Right.
I just think it's absolutely crucial.
A reconnecting kind of thing. So
Exactly.
is there a particular ayah or hadith that you come back to in times when you feel your faith faltering, or, you're having one of those down days?
I do often think about the ayah of the Quran where Allah says that, when they ask you, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that basically where I am, tell them that I'm closer to them than their jugular vein. I just think it's so powerful, just the fact that there's no distance between us and Allah. I also, let's see. I also think about, the fact that Allah promises us in the Quran that He won't burden our souls with more than we can bear. So, despite the fact that sometimes we just feel like, that things are just too much. It's too much. Just can't handle it. And I always just, I mean, God's promise is true. Allah's promise is true when He tells us that He will never burden us with more than He can bear. Then that He will never burden us with more than we can bear. And also the fact that, Allah says that, again in the Quran, that perhaps we hate a thing that is good for us. I mean, I can't count the number of times that something's happened that I just think, oh, this is just terrible. And then sometimes a day, sometimes a year later, I go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that happened, because it ended up being something beneficial. So, yeah.
Yes, but saying alhamdulillah and the good and the bad, because you never know what is what. And sometimes it's
Exactly.
perspective, like you're saying, to understand, oh, well, that was actually one of the best things that could have happened. So,
Exactly.
yeah, keeping your faith in Allah is a big one. So after you converted, you quit the church. Is that when you started to pursue nutrition as a career?
No, I actually I was working in the medical field at that point, but I actually ended up um starting to study nutrition formally after the birth of my second child. My first was having some health problems, and so in order to try and help him and his health, I just became more and more interested in nutrition, and eventually decided that that's something I actually wanted to do on a professional level.
Well, I find this so interesting because often you don't hear a lot about it in Islam, but it's a really big part of your worship is to take care of your
Mm.
body and your mind as well. And
Right.
were there anything specific in the Quran or the Hadith that kind of connected with you on that level as a certified nutritionist? Any advice that you have found?
Um, I would honestly say that, it's, we're given something, this goes back to something that appealed to me so much when I was initially learning about Islam is I remember as a Christian going, you know, when a person makes something, even something simple, just when he creates and manufactures something very simple, it almost always comes with an instruction manual of some sort, or at least instructions. And I just always ask myself, you know, we are not simple creation. We are very, very, very complex human
Mhm.
beings, and so why would God create us and not give us a complete instruction manual? And when I learned about Islam, and just how detailed and just how everything is covered. We're given a lot of wiggle room in certain aspects and whatnot, but kind of the foundation of this is what you should do versus this is what you should not do. I just thought, man, this is the instruction manual that I've been looking for, all my life, and that includes also, our lifestyle, not just in our faith, but also in our health. There's so many. Uh, there's You look at the habits of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and just the way the fact that how he addressed his own health, and um, how he ate so simply, and how he urged us not to overstuff ourselves, and
Mhm.
um, that's just another example of just how complete of you know,
A
how can I
guide.
say it? A guide, exactly.
Hmm. So do you bring that into your work then? All of this wisdom that we do have already in the Quran and the Hadith?
I do, especially, well, like I have a book in particular for Ramadan, specifically actually for busy moms. And I do tie, Hadith and Quran and whatnot into that. I think the thing that really like motivates me, so much in regards to tying nutrition and Islam together is just the fact that so many of us, vast majority of us, in fact, we don't comprehend just how much of an effect our diet and lifestyle have on on our mental and emotional health, and that
Hmm.
translates into also our spiritual health.
Right.
A prime example, is after fasting all day during Ramadan, how much more capable uh, of praying Taraweeh, for example, are we when after an actual nutritious iftar versus what so many of us indulge in during Ramadan,
Right.
of fried this and fried that and sweets and this and this, and then afterwards we don't want to stand up and pray,
Yeah, we're in
after
food
that.
coma.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and having, struggled with depression and anxiety myself, I've noticed, uh, you know, it's kind of it's a cycle. It's, my depression and anxiety can greatly affect, and I would venture to say that I speak for a lot of people, can greatly affect my spiritual health. I feel down, I just feel disconnected, I don't feel motivated to even, I have to drag myself to prayers and whatnot. And I've noticed just how profound of an effect my eating habits have on exactly that. So basically, the better that, that we eat, and holistic health, that's why I specialize in holistic nutrition. It's not, of course, just food, it's the way that we live, just, ensuring that we do physical activity, and mindfulness, and just kind of trying to like have very healthy lifestyle practices and eating habits as well. It can make a profound impact on your mental and emotional health, and it can help you to be able to dedicate yourself more with a clear mind, to Allah, to not just worshiping, not just praying and whatnot, but just to just be more present, just to have to be clear, more clear minded, and be able to connect with Him more often, and just really just to be able to to commit to Him more.
Right, because we are told as Muslims that our bodies also have a right over us. And so through the examples that we see with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, simple lifestyle and the things that he did, it was holistic in its approach, in his approach to all of life, and
Exactly.
we're told time and time again, there's a time for our fasting, and there's a time for us to not fast, and there's a time for us to pray Taraweeh, and there's a time for us to leave it and go to sleep.
Exactly.
So yes, I think that's so important to remember that our body is connected to our mind and our soul and our spiritual health.
Absolutely.
And what was the book that you have, so that we can, the listeners can look that up if they would like to see your Ramadan plan?
Yeah. So it's actually The Busy Mom's Guide to a Healthy Ramadan.
Perfect. And that's available on your website?
It is, yeah. MuslimMamaOnTheMove.com.
Okay. And we'll also link that in the show. So you touched on it a little bit, but I want to go back to talk about when you converted. You had been married to your husband, you said, for 2 years, and mashallah, you had 2 beautiful children together, and kind of took a journey together. And at some point, there was a point you couldn't continue on that journey. And I think a lot of our listeners go through divorce, and especially the reverts, whether they converted with or converted for, maybe. Go through maybe a time where their faith is tested because of the divorce and how they're treated. So how has the divorce changed you for the better or for the worse?
Well, fortunately, I should say, unfortunately, I know several, instances where a revert will actually, post divorce, will actually leave Islam. Fortunately, I didn't even so much as consider this. I never tied, my decision to be Muslim with my now ex-husband. It was a choice that I made solely on my own. So fortunately, I didn't. I've never had any doubts whatsoever. Of being Muslim post divorce. It definitely, it definitely, you know, shook my. I wouldn't say my faith, because I've never doubted my commitment to Islam, but it definitely like made it a bit more difficult for me to commit myself to the actual practice, of being Muslim. I struggled quite a bit with my prayers for quite some time, and especially, things were even made harder because, I decided to move abroad with my children. I wanted to have them experience some time in a Muslim country, and be able to pick up the Arabic language. I wanted to improve my own Arabic language as well. And so that in and of itself, being a single mom in a foreign country where I don't really know the language very well and whatnot, that had its own problems. But I think I really just allowed myself to just kind of like falter and fall, in my commitment to, practicing Islam. I also think that one of, looking back, I wouldn't say necessarily that I have regrets per se, because I feel I'm more than certain that everything happens for a reason. If I were to be speaking to someone, newly divorced, though, I would absolutely say that for me, had I have been more adamant about surrounding myself with friends who were practicing Muslims, who just really encouraged me, in the faith, that would have made a profound difference in my struggles. I would absolutely, and I think that goes for in any stage of life. For me at least, it's different for individual to individual, but I feel like I am able to just really connect at such a deeper level when I have encouragement around, when I have that sense of belonging and that sense of community, and and just other sisters to kind of just encourage me and inspire me. And if I'm, starting to kind of stumble a bit, just to help me back, on the right track and whatnot. So, fortunately, again, because, everything happens for a reason, the further I felt I was away from my practice of Islam, the more, the more severe, honestly, my depression and anxiety got. It had a significant impact on, on my emotional health. And so fortunately, that really just, I just noticed how I was just simply not feeling like myself. I just wasn't, I kept telling myself, I just want to feel like I used to in regards to my faith. I just want to have that connection again with Allah. And I feel like I'm losing it. And so, the only way, to do that is just to find my way back and just really just commit myself to praying on time again, and, reading Quran more often, listening to, lectures and podcasts and whatnot. And fortunately, alhamdulillah, that led me back to where I was supposed to. Of course, I'm not, there yet. I think that we all should, we all have room for improvement, of course. But fortunately, I definitely feel like I'm at a place where I feel a lot more connected, and just as expected, my depression and my anxiety has improved significantly.
Mm-hmm. So, what sort of advice then do you have for listeners maybe contemplating or going through a divorce? What were the things that you kind of went through in your head before getting the divorce? And then, post-divorce, how has that all played out for you?
I was definitely, there's a stigma, within the Muslim communities, about divorced women, sometimes finding remarriage difficult. And, of course, obviously that wasn't necessarily on my radar at that point, but, it was just something that kind of played a role and just, it sat a bit heavy on my mind sometimes because I thought, man, maybe I'm going to spend the rest of my life alone. And so, but, it's of course such an individual, decision, but I felt like, sometimes living life alone is a better choice than living life married, to our current, spouse. So, but it can definitely be hard, the thought of, loneliness and whatnot, and especially raising children alone. It's very, and even more so if you're a revert, because obviously you don't have the support, Islamically, from, your family or whatnot. So, I think though the thing that really helped me the most is, and it sounds so cliche, but I literally just had to, once I took the decision, to divorce, I just had to just continuously remind myself that, Allah's the best planner, and I am going to just do, after praying, a lot about it, I'm just going to do the best that I can do. But ultimately, I just have to trust in Allah's plan. And it's so much easier said than done. But it was something that I had to just remind myself constantly, to do, is just never lose hope, never, just know that, Allah is not going to just, leave me and abandon me. That's, He's always gonna, be there, and everything that is gonna happen from here on out, is gonna be precisely what's meant to happen.
Right.
I think that post divorce, it's important well, first of all, allow yourself to grieve. It's not like as Muslims, we're, again, there's this kind of misunderstanding that, as Muslims, we should be, we should say alhamdulillah for everything, and, and just, try not to be sad, try not to be, but no, even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he found himself time in instances where he was crying himself, so it's, allow yourself, to grieve. It's a normal human, response, of course, to something extremely difficult. Let yourself feel all the feelings, and also give yourself time to, and sometimes it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to just kind of rebuild yourself, and really just focus on yourself, focus on just, I guess picking up the pieces and figuring out like how you can better yourself, not so much with the intention necessarily, with the sole intention of eventually remarrying, but just because, each and every one of us deserves to be whole and, and as happy, and as healthy as we can possibly be just as individuals. And so I think it's a really good time to just really start focusing on, on ourselves, and really just try to see how we can improve our, our physical health, our, emotional health, and especially our spiritual health.
Right. I mean, you're one brave lady, I have to say, going abroad with 2 young kids. So it was the divorce kind of that spurred you on this adventure?
No, not so much. I actually was still married when I initially moved, and the plan was he was going to follow us abroad. But it basically, we were we were already kind of, at the end, I guess, before I even moved abroad. And it was just the distance, that the physical distance is kind of, as they say, the last straw, basically. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it wasn't intentional, but now you're doing it. And so how has
Right.
the reaction of the Muslim community been to you as a single mother traveling with your children?
Um, I honestly have only experienced like positivity in that regard. Maybe it's because I wear rose tinted sunglasses, and maybe I've gotten flack from people, and I just simply don't pay any mind to it. But I really, I really try to just I try to take my travels as a single Muslim, mother, and use it, to inspire other people, especially other Muslim women, whether they're single or not, to just not even so much just to go out and travel, but just to know that you're probably a heck of a lot braver than you imagine you are. And
Mm.
and it's okay to be intimidated by something. I couldn't have ever in a million years imagined myself having the strength and the nerve to do three-quarters of the stuff that I've been doing. Before I moved abroad, I had never, spent more than a few weeks in a foreign country, and then suddenly I'm living in one, and venturing, and driving in the Middle East, which, of course, you've been into the Middle East. It's
Yeah.
absolute chaos, but
Cairo is
it's
not
just
a nice place to learn how to drive.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, fortunately it's been quite positive. I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of Muslim women, and just that they feel just inspired, and to just kind of venture out, even if it's just, a weekend trip with the kids, to a neighboring, town or the beach or something like that. So it's honestly been quite a good response.
Oh, alhamdulillah, inshallah. So, and out of this, you created your Muslim Mama on the Move website, which is fantastic, by the way. And I thoroughly encourage all the listeners to go take a look at what you've been cooking up and writing as well. So, when did you actually decide to create it, and what inspires you to keep going with it?
Um, I actually, so up until last year, I was focused on just offering nutrition consulting virtually, just basically just most like one-on-one nutrition. Um, but last year, I actually came to Cairo for a visit. I was actually living in the Middle East, and I had never been to Cairo. So I ventured over here in March, early March, when the world was actually still fairly
Went
normal.
sideways.
I actually, yeah, yeah, I met my mom and my sister here, who had actually flown in from the States, and we were at the tail end of our vacation, about to leave, and all of a sudden we found the airports, starting to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually ended up getting stuck here in Cairo all summer. I was here for 5 or 6 months, and I was darn near stir crazy. My mom and my sister took an emergency flight out, but I decided to stay. Up until then, I had not homeschooled the kids. I was quite busy with my own work. And all of a sudden, I found myself a homeschooling mother, at home with my kids, basically 24/7. Everything was closed because of, COVID. And I was struggling so badly. And I, the internet connection was so bad that I couldn't even give one-on-one consulting. And so, and again, I just thought this is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen to me. But then, I thought, no, there's something going on. There's something behind this. And so I gradually started to move into, I've always been so passionate about writing since I was in grade school, actually. And I had actually, leading up to this point last year, I was actually asked several times by family and friends who have known me for a long time, why have you not written a book? Writing is your thing. Why are you not writing? And so I thought, I can't, I'm at home with the kids 24/7. I have poor internet connection. The only thing I can think to do that I don't need internet connection for, and that I can do, in little bits and pieces with the kids being home, is just write, So that's basically what I started doing. I started to write, and I studied a little bit of graphic art and design in college, so I ended up developing my own website, and honestly, that creative outlet for me, it's what has really pulled me through this last insane year that I've had. It's been really, really, yes.
Well, mashallah, necessity is the mother of all invention, as they do say. So
Exactly.
I'm sure in a
Yes.
couple of years you'll look back and you'll say, "Oh, well, that's why that had to happen that way." So, alhamdulillah.
Absolutely.
So wrapping up here, do you have any last minute words of advice for those who are thinking about converting to Islam, or even about, holistic nutrition?
I do actually have something that I say to anyone who I personally know who is studying Islam or has recently converted, or even not so recently converted, is to never take Muslims as to give you, as a
Measuring stick?
don't yeah, basically, yes. don't try to learn about Islam just simply by by looking at Muslims. Muslims are no different than any other
People on earth.
people of every religion. We're flawed just like everyone else. And so, and there's so many cultural things that make its way into what would look like the faith, but it's actually not. Always just, find reliable sources, find podcasts or people, on YouTube or whatever, that are both credible and who can, you can really relate to and connect with, and use that, to really start to learn from them, and just, or strengthen your iman. And if there's something that, you're told, or that you see, or you hear, that just seems to really turn you off. Yeah, just to, that just, oh my gosh, really, is that what we believe as Muslims? Like something that just like really doesn't know that you need
Can you
to
think
just
of an example of that? It sounds like you have a specific example, or maybe a couple that you ran into. Do you have a specific example?
Yeah, like, okay, the first one that comes to mind is, because there's definitely, been a few times where I've been like, is in my, especially my early years, and I've just been like, wow, like, fortunately, I'm a very objective person, and I try not to kind of, jump to conclusions. But I see that a lot with new, reverts. I remember listening to a lecture once, and the lecturer, he was basically highly encouraging the Muslim brothers to consider taking on multiple wives. And and I thought, and I was very new, I was a very new Muslim, and I had, it was one of the many questions, of course, that I had asked the sheikh, why is that allowed, and this, that, and the other. And so I thought, I know it's allowed, and I know the knowledge behind it and the purposes and whatnot, but is this really how it's considered? Like something like, you should do, and
Right.
people,
Everyone should do. Yeah.
exactly. But fortunately, I think it's so important to have people who you can just kind of, turn to and just send a quick text to or call and just be like, can you clear something up for me? Because this didn't sound, this didn't really sit right with me. I think it's so important for that, because there's just, there is no shortage of misconceptions and
opinion
exactly, and
created around
opinions.
as authority, basically. Yes, I agree with you. It's a
Exactly.
very big pitfall that anyone looking to revert or someone newly reverted really needs to watch out for, because as you
Absolutely.
said, the sources are endless, and being a non-native Arabic speaker, also sometimes we're at that disadvantage to feel like our knowledge might not be as good or as
Mhm.
valid. But
Yes.
there's no excuse. We have all the sources in English. Somebody saying something should be able to point you to something and explain
Exactly.
it with facts, as you are saying. So yes, I can't tell you
Exactly.
how many reverts I've heard this from, that you really have to be careful.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, do you have any like favorite websites or scholars in particular that you really connect with that maybe the listeners should take a look at?
Um, I love to listen to Mufti Mink. Um,
Mhm.
I enjoy Numan Ali Khan, and actually I absolutely love the initiative he has, Bayana Institute. Yeah, that is, I really enjoy that a lot. I'm actually a member of that, and I just find it extremely beneficial. I love to listen to Yasmin Mujahid. I had the pleasure actually of, yes, I had the pleasure of having dinner with her once, and she's just so down to earth and so relatable, and just so raw. Um, I like Omar Saliman. Um, I think he's great, and I also like Yasser Qadi. Um, I would say that those are kind of my
Go-to.
go-tos, I guess. Yes.
The list is very similar for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the I would like to mention Omar Suleiman's project Yaqeen Institute is a very
Yes.
beautiful and in-depth website, and whatever issue you have, I'm sure you can find either a lecture or a video or an article that explains in depth whatever you're confused about. So definitely some fantastic resources that you've mentioned. Um, and as far as the holistic health goes, do you still do the personal nutrition consults at this time, or?
No, not at this time. Not with the chaos and craziness of my schedule and my life right now.
Okay. Um, so any other parting words of advice for our listeners?
Um, hmm, nothing I can think of.
Mm.
Yeah, I think yeah, we've covered so much, and I can't think of anything else to add.
Okay. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on the show, Lindsey. We
Thank
wish you the
you.
best in your travels, and may Allah bless your life with your children and keep you safe.
I mean, thank you so much. You as well.
You're welcome. Jazakallah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum.